Listen, there are a lot of jobs out there that people will hear that you do and go, oh, you're doing what you love. How hard could that job really be? I bet you're excited to wake up for work every single day. And speaking from a little bit of personal experience here, YouTuber is most definitely one of those jobs. But let me tell you right now, also speaking for personal experience, it's still a job. And so finding the chops to do it every single day is very similar to finding the chops to do really any other kind of job every single day. And YouTuber is still one of the easier creative jobs. But on the other end of the spectrum from YouTuber, there exists a job that, even though many would consider it a dream job, it's kind of a nightmare. And that job description is none other than mangaka, or manga author. See, because while millions of kids grow up dreaming of writing comics for a job, the reality of writing a comic, especially a popular one, is grueling, unrelenting, literal back-breaking work, especially if you do it in Japan. And thus, in this new era of manga, we've seen a rash of mangakas come down with health issues, whether it be from not eating correctly, not sleeping enough, or just drawing too much. And thus, every popular manga has gone on some kind of hiatus, whether it be JJK's sporadic 2-week breaks, Oda switching his schedule from 4 chapters a month to 3 chapters a month, or even hiatuses as legendary as Hunter x Hunter's hiatus, which has now been on hiatus for an additional year after the 3.5 years it's been on hiatus prior to the 10 chapters we got last December. Oh, 2 Decembers ago. But stories like Hunter x Hunter and Vinland Saga are anomalies. Fortunately, they truly fall into the worst case categorization when it comes to mangakas needing more time to produce their story. But then what's the best case scenario for a mangaka needing more time to complete their story? Is it sporadic breaks like JJK? Is it planned breaks like Kaiju number 8 in One Piece? Is it a monthly release schedule like Boruto and Attack on Titan? Or is it a quarterly release schedule like Black Clover? Well, I'll tell you right now, I don't think it's a quarterly release schedule, because here's the thing. Well, Yuki Tabata needs time for his family and his body, and therefore he's completely justified in switching Black Clover to a quarterly release schedule. I think Black Clover is proving to us exactly how short people's attention spans are. And somewhat surprisingly, it's not as short as we originally thought, because somewhat in secret, April 29th, Black Clover released 2 new chapters, to a grand total of 0 fanfare whatsoever. I didn't realize it came out until I got texted about it 3 days after their release, today. And if you guys know anything about this channel, or just manga review channels on YouTube, you'll know if you're not first, you're kind of last. So me making a video talking about these Black Clover chapters this late is kind of a dud waiting to happen. But I could say the same for the continuation of Black Clover, at least from a manga perspective, because these 2 new chapters of Black Clover, chapters 370 and 371, while being fun reads that we will absolutely go over, also helps me realize that Black Clover is simultaneously in the worst place it's ever been, while also possibly being in the best place it's ever been. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, well, Black Clover is in one of the rarest situations I've ever seen from a manga IP, as its manga has now lost almost all of the momentum that it's been generating for the last 8 years, while its anime stock is on an exponential rise. Yes, that's right. Black Clover's manga is currently sputtering out in its final arc, while the anime is possibly getting picked up for a seasonal release schedule. And that is too interesting not to talk about. But also, we should talk about chapters 370 and 371. So today we're doing a big Black Clover episode, because today we're talking chapters 370 and 371 of Black Clover Explained. But before we get to explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you love the idea of me talking about your favorite anime and manga, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Talkers Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime and manga this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to see me live while I talk about some anime and manga, come on down to Comic Palooza, Memorial Day weekend in Houston, May 24th to the 26th, where I'm going to be doing 6 panels talking about how to become an anime YouTuber and anime and manga. So April 29th, which was 3 days ago as of the filming of this video, we got 2 new chapters of Black Clover, which is kind of interesting because 3 months ago, we only got 1 chapter of Black Clover, which elicited the response from a lot of people that 28 pages every 3 months isn't really gonna cut it, in the fact that the story may literally never end at that pace. And thus this month, we got a rather interesting release of 2 20-page chapters, which is odd for a quarterly release schedule when you consider the fact that a monthly release schedule just releases 1 40-page chapter, something that Yuki Tabata could have just done. Yet for some reason, the decision was made to split those 40 pages into 2 separate chapters. Most likely because years from now, when the Black Clover manga is over, if somebody picks it up and wants to read it, they don't want the chapter length switching from 20 pages to 40 for some reason. I know it's weird to think about the future, but that's probably the situation. And out of these 2 chapters, one chapter is the clear superior, and that would be chapter 371, which focuses on Merleona's battle against Morris. But there's 2 chapters to talk about, so we gotta talk about the clear inferior chapter first. Chapter 370. Now, if you remember to 3 months ago, Chapter 369 ended with Luck and Magma taking out one of Lucius's clones. However, prior to them doing that, Asta asked Lucius who has the advantage in this fight, implying that the advantage on the battlefield had shifted to Team Asta because Asta had returned from the Land of Sun and was now fighting side by side with Yuno in a 2v2 battle against 2 Lucius clones. However, Lucius said that he had the advantage because he had something like 30 angels, 11 clones, and a couple paladins. But after a myriad of those angels, and one of his clones is defeated by Luck and Magma, who exhaust their anti-magic that Asta gave to them, Asta and Yuna begin to once again fly at Lucius, and Asta screams, "Who has the advantage now?" However, Lucius, not to be outdone apparently, uses this moment to begin casting his ultra-wide-reaching Tree of Queloff adjacent spell. See, for those of you who don't remember what Lucius's grand plan is, can't say I blame you, but Lucius's plan is to kill everybody on Earth and resurrect them using his magic. Because Lucius has bone, blood, body, and soul magic, which is why he's able to make perfect clones of himself, and it's why he'll be able to resurrect everybody. At least resurrect the people that he deems worthy to resurrect. Then Lucius will subjugate the entirety of humanity, which will now be an army of paladins, and rule over them as the final immortal wizard king. And apparently this spell is manifesting as a spiritual tree type spell, creating a giant divine tree whose roots are growing, interestingly, into Yuno's Never Neverland. And for those of you who don't remember what Yuno's Never Neverland was, it's the largest monozone we've ever seen created, so large that it was able to encapsulate the entirety of the Clover Kingdom's capital. And the purpose of Yuno's Never Neverland monozone was to increase the magical output of his allies and hamper the magical output of Lucius and his paladin, while also allowing for Yuno to stop Lucius from using time magic. Rather interestingly, however, though, it appears as though Lucius has tapped into that monozone, possibly making it his own. And if the compound magic tree that he made is actually able to take over Never Neverland, there's a strong possibility in 3 months' time, in Chapter 372, we'll see Lucius once again using time magic, because Yuno may no longer be in charge of the monozone. Now, somewhat interestingly, while all of this is going on, we get a cut to William Vangeance and Charlotte saying that they're not going to let this happen, which is interesting because William Vangeance obviously uses world tree magic, and Charlotte uses her curse vine magic. It also cuts to Brill's reaction, which is also interesting because the majority of Brill's magic does manifest as plant life. We then cut back to Asta and Yuno as they look up at Lucius as the roots of the tree grow throughout Yuno's monozone. As Asta screams at Yuno, we have to get to Lucius's body quick, his real body, not one of his clones. And we get a flashback to when the Shogun of Hino Country, using his special eye, told Asta that Lucius was only afraid of Yuno and Asta because they were the only 2 people capable of defeating him. For Asta and Yuno are able to even make a move towards Lucius's real body. 2 of his clones appear out of the rubble of the city now being lifted towards the base of the tree. I guess it's actually a pretty important detail. The second that the tree appeared, the entire city began to raise towards it. And like not all in one piece, like a bunch of rubble. A lot of people died. But before the 2 Lucius clones can do any damage to Yuno or Asta, a portal opens behind them and out flies the Black Bulls. Well, more specifically, Charmy, Zora, Finral, and Sekire, all donned in their special anti-magic new looks, with Charmy's anti-magic new look being the most intimidating as she just makes her giant sheep man, but all black and real big and buff, like a giant black sheep mech. We then get a couple of other looks around the battlefields, not in the immediate proximity of Yuno and Asta, and we see that Gauche has flown to the age of Brill, surrounding one of Lucius's clones with a myriad of black mirrors. We then see that Gray and Vanessa have flown to the aid of Noelle, who's locked in combat against the paladin version of her mother, and they too are facing down against a Lucius clone. But possibly the most interesting update we get is from Gordon. Yes, that's right, Gordon Agrippa, who pulls up on William Vangeance and Charlotte and uses his new and improved curse magic to heal the both of them. And the way that he does this is rather interesting, because if you remember, both William Vangeance and Charlotte have curse magic applied to them, and a big arc for the both of them has been better controlling said cursed magic. Well, if you remember correctly, which I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, when everybody was training prior to, or maybe after the Dark Triad arc, I don't remember when it was, Gordon went back to his family for 6 months. And during those 6 months, he trained with his father and learned how to apply his curse magic in a medicinal sense. And one of the abilities that he learned was the Curse Worker's Neighbor, an ability that allowed Gordon to place his hands on somebody who was affected by curse magic and give them the ability to better handle and control said cursed magic. And by granting them additional control over their own magic, Gordon would in essence heal his allies, and thus that's exactly what he does for William Vengeance and Charlotte. And we know this because when Gordon uses Curse Worker's Neighbor, black marks extend from the corners of his mouth and his eyes. We also see that Yami, Noct, and Yumachika are battling against a Lucius clone and a paladin. And this paladin is none other than Morgan Faust, Noct's older brother, who's able to control not only light magic, but also dark magic, hence the light sword and the dark sword. We also see that Henry, through the medium of big sections of the Black Bull's castle crashing through a portal, is also taking on a Lucius clone, which, if you've been counting, means that the Black Bulls are currently battling against 7 of the now remaining 10 Lucius. And the 3 archangels that are left are Morris, Morgan Faust, and Osier Silva. And Morris is fighting Marileona and the Crimson Lions, but more Marileona. Morgan is fighting Yami, Noct, and Yumachika, and Osier is fighting Noelle. After we get this battlefield update, Yuno, Asta, and the Black Bulls that are with them, Charmy, Zora, Sekire, and Finral, all charge the 2 Luciuses they're in battle against. And that's how the chapter ends. So really not all that much happens in this chapter. It kind of just sets up the next upcoming chapters, as the important fights to keep an eye on that'll all probably get 1 chapter will be Gauche's fight, Gordon, William Vengeance, and Charlotte's fight, Yami, Yumachika, Noct, Morgan, and Lucius Clone's fight, Osier and Noelle's fight, Vanessa and Gray's fight, Henry's fight, and last but definitely not least, Yuno and Asta's fight, which will probably get like 2-3 chapters. And as somebody who quite literally hypothesized that this is exactly where the story was going in the last video I posted, and said that if the story made it to another 12 chapters, I would be impressed, this feels pretty good. I was pretty much spot on, because if Luck and Magnus fight only got 1 chapter, and they're probably the 4th and 5th most popular Black Bulls outside of Yami, Noelle, and Asta, I can't imagine that Gray, Vanessa, Gauche, Zora, and Sekire are all gonna get more than 1 chapter, especially when you consider the fact that chapter 371 saw Marileona wrapping up her fight in 1 chapter. So let's talk about it. I mean, yes, I'm aware that Marileona and Morris have been fighting for more than 1 chapter, but I believe every chapter moving on from here is going to be 1 fight, 1 chapter. So chapter 371 picks back up on Marileona's fight where we had left off there a couple chapters prior, and that is in dire straits. See, for those of you who don't remember Morris as a character, I can't really say I blame you. See, Morris was a magical scholar of the Diamond Kingdom who was controlling the king of the Diamond Kingdom. However, after Mars receded control of the Diamond Kingdom, he forced Morris out, and thus Morris began working for the Dark Triad of the Spade Kingdom, and eventually became the host of the devil Lucifero, who was in control of gravity magic. And thus, after Dante Sagratis was defeated, Lucifero switched to Morris's body, trying to use Morris's body and his magic as the final push to open the last level of the Tree of Queloth. However, Morris is knocked unconscious by Asta's Demon Dweller Sword, at which point Lucifero takes over Morris's body and uses his power to combine with the other demons that are pouring out of the Tree of Queloth now that a couple of the gates have been opened. However, because all this is happening with Morris's body, it's massively detrimental to his body, as he's also pulled into this convulsing demon mass. And in this process, he loses his right arm, his right eye, the bottom half of his legs, and his left just generally crippled after Lucifero's defeat. However, after Lucius is able to get all of the powers of his siblings, he now holds the 4 pieces necessary: body, bone, blood, and soul magic to recreate people's bodies. And thus Lucius goes to Morris and gives him a brand new body, at which point he also turns him into a paladin. And with his new body, Morris has gotten an ability known as Operation Dismantle, which works eerily similar to Shigaraki's Decay. That is to say that anything that Morris touches, he'll immediately disintegrate, as the paladin power coursing through him has now massively boosted his modification magic. See, because Morris was born with modification magic, that's why he was so important to the Tree of the Queloth Advent ritual, as his modification magic was necessary for using William Vengeance and Yami to open a bunch of gates into hell and release a bunch of devils and all that. You get it. Now, this magic has always been crazy powerful, even when it was just Lucifero pumping power into his body, as Morris with this modification ability was able to dismantle things that didn't exist, like knowledge and dreams. And it also allows him to ability disassemble and reassemble living creatures, which is now what we understand Shigaraki's quirk was supposed to be. And thus, over the course of this battle against Marileona, Morris has not only disintegrated her right arm, but also pretty much the entirety of the Crimson Lions. However, as Marileona was able to activate her Hellfire Incarnate mode, which is an application of Monozone that basically makes her body mana, she's been able to throw punches that Morris disintegrates but immediately regenerate her fists using mana. And the chapter opens with the last of the Crimson Lions saying, "We leave it up to you, Mereoleona," as they crumble away. And Morris sneers at Mereoleona, saying, "Are all those incompetents finally dead?" And to that point that he opens his grimoire and says, "Okay, well then I'll show you some real living shields," and casts Earth Magic, March of the Holy Fools. And we didn't really know that Morris was able to use Earth Magic, as up to this point I believe he had only ever used gravity and modification magic, but Lucius has already shown that he adds a magical attribute to any paladin he creates, and thus it would make sense that Morris would have an additional magical attribute. Now, March of the Holy Fools appears to let Morris create mud clones. They're just kind of like fodder mud soldiers, of which Mereoleona immediately eviscerates. And Mereoleona is baffled by the fact that it took him this long to use magic with his second attribute, to which Morris responds by saying, "I identified the way that you used your foot soldiers as meat shields and aimed for the top." It's at this point that we get a little exposition background story from Morris talking about how the dimmer a person is, the more they talk about ethics, and about how those who aren't trying to break the laws of natural order should be used as research subjects. But regardless of how much research Morris did, he was never able to break the true laws of nature. But since he persevered, God chose him and gave him complete control over life and death with his new amped modification magic. And it's at this point that Mereoleona gets mobbed by his Earth soldiers, who, like him, have the ability to regenerate. However, Mereoleona, still being made of literal fire, once again eviscerates all the soldiers clinging onto her. However, it's at this point that Lucius makes a crucial mistake, and he says the word limit to a Clover Kingdom mage. You never do that. As he screams at Mereoleona, "That's your limit, human. Now come surpass all the laws of nature under Master Lucius like I have." And as it tends to do in Black Clover, the sheer mention of the word limit triggers a flashback back to when Mereoleona was growing up, before she even got her grimoire, when she would ask members of the Crimson Lions to train with her and be summarily rejected by everyone, as apparently the average magic knight couldn't even touch Mereoleona before she even got her grimoire, which made Mereoleona introspective about the fact that nobody could ever keep up with her. So when she was young, she got it in her mind that it was alright if nobody ever tried, and thus Mereoleona realized that she could get no stronger in the human world, and thus that's why she pushed herself to go to mana-rich areas that would kill the average human, to bathe in lava rich with mana so that she could master her mana zone and push it beyond what anybody dreamed imaginable. And she believes she was almost able to push beyond what was possible for humanity, but this is as far as she could go. And as she begins to fall back towards the earth, a series of hands reaches out to her back and pushes her back up. And these are the hands, at least the spiritual hands, of all of the Crimson Lions who just gave their lives to give her an opportunity to battle against Morris. Men and women who begged to train with Mereoleona even though they knew they would never catch her in strength. And as Mereoleona is propped back up by these soul hands, Fuegoleon appears by her side and apologizes for taking so long. And it's revealed that Fuegoleon has been fighting numerous angels all by himself somewhere elsewhere, with the help of his fire spirit Worm, I believe was its name. Checking the wiki, Salamander, not even close. But it's this point that Mereoleona reveals to Fuegoleon that she wasn't waiting for it, and tells Fuegoleon that she had just figured something out. After which she does the thing. She screams, "I'm constantly surpassing my limits." Told you, Morris, never. Don't say L-I-M-I-T. Don't say it. It's like saying W-A-L-K in front of a dog. And it's this point that Mereoleona activates a new mode. A mode that ruptures the ground in hundreds of meters in a circle around her. And from the cracks in the ground rise flame soldiers. And the spell is called Ultimate Flame Magic. I'm gonna have to read this because it's Latin. Excelliarmus Leonium. Excellictus. Leonum. Excellictus Leonium. I took 2 years of Latin in middle school, which is why I can tell you that Excellictus Leonium means exaltation of lions, which for those of you who don't know, exaltation in this context means the action of raising somebody in rank, power, or character. That is to say that this ability allows Mereoleona to bring all the fallen lions back to life. Now, it's unclear if Mereoleona is only able to do this because these lions just died, or if she's able to bring back all dead Crimson Lions. However, considering the fact that all of these lions reappeared in the place that they had died, it's most likely that whatever this flame magic touches comes back to life as a flame lion of sorts. And this confuses all of the Crimson Lions as all of them look down at their new flamey mana hands and go, I'm pretty sure I just died. At which point Mereoleona says, don't think dying means you can take it easy, or simply just revived as a pseudo Jinwoo shadow army, but instead of shadows, fire. Because while there definitely is now a new army of Crimson Lions standing behind Mereoleona, they all kind of look like Mereoleona. That is to say that their clothing, their face, their facial hair, their aura is wispy and fiery. So as to whether or not they are humans or just manifested mana, I can't necessarily say. However, that distinction may not necessarily matter, because Mereoleona rallies her troops and says, even if you die, follow me, and they all scream out, yes, Unk, in unison. And Mereoleona, with their new fire army, charge Morris. But Morris said it doesn't matter if you're leading another army, I'll dismantle all of them, and lunges at Mereoleona with a barrage of hands, all of which Mereoleona immediately destroys. But this confuses Morris because she shouldn't be able to come into contact with his hands without disintegrating. But this leads Morris to come to the realization that Mereoleona's body has switched entirely to that of mana, or more specifically, entirely to the flames of resurrection, meaning that Mereoleona has transcended having a physical form, which leads Morris to fly into an anger, saying that no, that's our realm. We're the only people who are supposed to surpass the natural laws. But Mereoleona tells him that the men who risked their lives taught me the ideal shape of the human soul, at which point Mereoleona lands a barrage of punches on Morris's body that disintegrate him in its entirety, telling him that he got to fuel her evolution and that he couldn't ask for more than that. Could he? Meaning there is now one less Archangel on the battlefield. Now, does this mean that Mereoleona's body is now completely incorporeal and she just exists as mana? Probably not. She can probably switch between the modes. But what I am genuinely curious about is as to whether or not her soldiers can do that as well. The answer is probably. It's Black Clover. People don't really die in it. But it's still a definitive possibility that all of the Crimson Lions that did get destroyed by Morris aren't going to be able to come back. But that would be kind of weird when you consider the fact that they did nothing in the fight after being resurrected. So just kind of be like,
oh, welcome back. Don't worry, I figured it out. Bye now.
So yeah, Mereoleona now has the ability to resurrect anybody who dies on the battlefields and possibly give them access to a mana body, which is crazy broken, and it now means we probably need to rescale Mereoleona at some point or another, but we'll wait until the story's over to do that. So all in all, these were two really fun chapters. So why is nobody talking about them? Well, I hate to say it, but it's the quarterly release schedule. See, when the first chapter of the quarterly release schedule came out 3 months ago, there was a fair amount of hype drummed up. We got to see the new anti-magic modes. Luck and Magna dueled out against a Lucius clone. They used the massive Black Rasengan to delete him. But that chapter was being talked about a lot because it was somewhat steeped in drama, as people were actively alleging scenes from that chapter being directly ripped from Naruto, which is a claim that gets thrown at Black Clover a fair amount. But since these chapters didn't necessarily have much in the way of drama, it appears as though nobody's talking about them. No one's texting me about them, which is rare. I didn't realize they came out. And there is hardly any videos on YouTube covering what happened in these two chapters. And all of this is backed up by the fact that even on Manga Plus's rankings, Black Clover is only clocking in 12th place, under relatively new IPs like Kagurabachi, Astro Royale, Centuria, and this isn't good. Because here's the thing, the argument that the majority of people use for saying that Boruto's stats aren't impressive in terms of reads and rankings on Manga Plus and other manga websites
is that, oh, Boruto comes out monthly, so when it comes out, everybody reads it, and that's why it trends over things like JJK and One Piece.
Even though the Boruto chapter has been out now for almost 13 days, and it's still trending above JJK and One Piece. But there is an iota of truth in that sentiment. When a monthly or a quarterly manga comes out, it should be top 5. And yet Black Clover's chapter, which has only been out for 3 days, is sitting at 12th place. And this isn't the kind of problem that's going to fix itself in the next 3 to 4 years. Because like we've already established, there's probably close to 10 chapters left in Black Clover, which means we have about 2.5 years before Black Clover is over. And while I'm going to read every single one of those chapters, 5 or 6 of those chapters are going to be similar to what we got in 369. Side members of the Black Bulls defeating a Lucius clone. And while it's going to be incredible for real Black Clover fans, stringing that over the course of 2.5 years is gonna be tough for fan retention. However, ironically, the dip in manga reads is correlating at the exact same time that hype is being drummed up Black Clover's anime. As Studio Period, the people who developed and animated the first 170 episodes of Black Clover, just recently announced that the IP they have on hiatus are most likely going to return as seasonal anime. And if Black Clover were to be greenlighted as a seasonal anime, it could return as soon as tomorrow. There's 100 chapters of manga that haven't been adapted, and thus, while I do believe that the manga is probably in the worst spot it's ever been, I don't think that will last for long. Because while JJK's popularity as a manga is because the manga is incredible, it's also because the anime is really good, and that got people to read the manga. And thus, I believe Black Clover's slide into possible despair through the manga might actually come at a perfect time, as the anime coming back will regenerate hype for the IP, especially when you consider the fact that a seasonally animated Dark Triad arc is what we're looking at here. And the Dark Triad arc is probably the best arc in the entire manga. So while it might seem like kind of dark days for the Black Clover fandom right now, I don't think that's going to last for long. And I think in a matter of months, we should be getting some big news about this very incredible and important story. But for the moment, who knows? I'll see you in another 3 months when another chapter drops. Or possibly another 2 chapters drop. Or another 3 chapters drop. Maybe we're just gonna get another extra chapter every single month. Well, every single 3 months. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this chapter and what you think about Black Clover's future. So tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Ooh, it'll be August by the time we get our next chapter. That's my birthday month. Oh, I'll be turning 28.